So in my book Burning Part 2, A Violinist of Venice, I explained at length the significance of Adriana using a statement instead of an equivalent question in her dialogue with Vivaldi, and why it not only made her come across as very, very rude, but also made the dialogue overly dramatic and artificial. Afterwards, I just kinda rushed over the rest of the dialogue because it's bad for mostly the same reasons that Adriana's opening line is, but I want to come back to it and go in depth as to why the dialogue is shit. So let's go line by line. Vivaldi says, "Who are you? What do you want?" which is a rational reaction to someone barging into your home, so no gripes there. Adriana then steps forward, pulls her hood back and says, "I seek Maestro Vivaldi, the man they call Il Prete Rosso." This line screams dramatic pretense. I explained why the first part of it is bad in the other video, but the second part seems to be said to clarify who she is looking for. Giving this extra detail about Vivaldi doesn't make sense if Adriana thinks that she is talking to someone who knows Vivaldi, or in this case, is Vivaldi. It would make more sense for this line to be said if, after Adriana asks for Vivaldi, she was met with a "Who is Vivaldi?" or something like that. She just blurts out, "The man they call the Red Priest," because that's a dramatic expository line said expressly for the audience, not for the characters in the scene. Vivaldi responds, "Humph! You have found him, although I do not know that I rightly deserve the title of Maestro anymore. After all, I have been sacked." This line is fine on its own, as Vivaldi might reasonably respond to a person calling him Maestro like this, but it doesn't make sense in this context. Vivaldi too easily diffuses in this situation where a stranger has barged into his home. At first he's all like, "Who are you? What do you want?" But then after one line that doesn't really answer his questions in any satisfactory way, he just drops the antagonistic tone and immediately starts expositing. This is not how a real person would act in this situation. Adriana says, "I know, I was thinking that as you are currently out of a job, you might be willing to take on a private student." You don't respond to a superior telling you something with, "I know," because that demonstrates that your priority is to impress yourself upon them rather than learn from them. The next line is just bad. There's no empathy expressed towards Vivaldi for him losing his job, no words of consolation or even an "I'm sorry to hear that." Instead, Adriana just tells him what he might be willing to do. She doesn't even ask him, "Are you willing to take me as a student?" and it comes across as a demand. Vivaldi's next line demonstrates that this rudeness of Adriana isn't actually intentional on the part of the author. He doesn't respond to this disrespect by acting as though he's been slighted. He instead responds as though Adriana made a polite and reasonable request. "I might be," he says, as though Adriana hadn't just barged into his home and made a demand. This demonstrates that the author doesn't have a good sense of her own dialogue. Adriana then doesn't ask about his fees, she just throws him a coin purse and says, "I trust that will be sufficient for my first month of lessons, as well as your discretion," which is putting words in his mouth. It's piss-poor form to speak on behalf of the person you're talking to, especially if you're the one making a request of them. Vivaldi responds to the coin purse with, "Who are you?" because Adriana hasn't told him her name yet, and she just stands there gormlessly, not telling him her name. So instead of pushing the point, Vivaldi drops the question and then says, "If you can afford to pay me so much, etc., etc., blah blah blah, why come here in the middle of the night to seek me out?" And you might think that this is him responding to the disrespect by offering his own, but he's not. He's responding to the coin purse, and his gripe is with the fact that Adriana is rich, not that she's barged into his home and disrespected him. Adriana, instead of answering his question, says, "That is quite the lengthy tale, Padre. Suffice it to say that I have heard that there is no better violinist in all of Venice than yourself, and that is why I have gone to such lengths to find you." That first line is just a pretentious way of saying, "It's a long story." The middle line, about there being no better violinist than Vivaldi, is fine because that's a compliment. But when Adriana says that she has gone to such lengths to find him, she's again trying to impress herself upon him, which is, again, rude. Vivaldi then says, "You wish to learn the violin, then," which moves the scene along, so it's fine. And Adriana could have just said yes, but instead decides to be a drama queen and offer a slice of backstory. "I used to play years ago. It has been a very long time." Vivaldi says, "Show me what you know." And after Adriana plays the violin for him, he says, "Good, good. Not bad at all. I can tell that you have a natural talent and you certainly play with passion." Fine enough as a line, except that this full stop into an "and" is grammatically incorrect. It's the same sentence, and if Vivaldi pauses in the middle of a sentence, you should use an ellipsis, not a full stop. He then says, "I shall teach you. I assume you have an instrument of your own." Vivaldi here is doing exactly what Adriana was doing earlier. He's putting words in her mouth. But it's not bad in this case. You see, Adriana shouldn't be impolite to Vivaldi because she's making a request from him. So antagonizing him would risk him refusing her, which goes against her interests. Vivaldi can stand to be impolite to Adriana because he doesn't really want anything from her in this scene, so he doesn't stand to lose anything. Except payment for lessons, I suppose, but we don't know how highly he values money at this moment in the story, story, so there's some freedom surrounding this detail for the author. Adriana says, "Yes, I do, though it will be difficult for me to bring it here with me. As I said already, cut either for me or with me." Vivaldi says, "I have one that you may use. You wish to come here for your lessons, then?" Adriana says, "Yes, if that suits." Vivaldi says, "Very well. Shall we say 2 days hence, around midday, if that is agreeable to you?" I don't like the word agreeable in this context with these characters, and it doesn't help that Adriana repeats the word in her next line. Yes, that is agreeable. Also, why would Vivaldi offer a midday lesson when Adriana came to meet him in the middle of the night? Surely the impetus is on Adriana to say that she's comfortable meeting him during the daytime in this context. Vivaldi says, "Though I do not suppose you will tell me the reasons behind such a need for discretion," and the line is written with a question mark despite not being a question. The same goes with these earlier lines. Sure, they're all requesting information or clarification from Adriana, but at the end of the day, they're not really questions, and this kind of exemplifies the problem with this dialogue. Neither of these characters can seem to politely ask each other anything except for when Vivaldi repeatedly asks for Adriana's name. They're speaking as though they're computer algorithms. Adriana says, "As I said, that is quite the long story, Padre, and one that would be better saved for another time." Using Padre twice in the same way so close to each other is uncreative. Also, "as I said," is generally an antagonistic lead into a clarification because it implies that the other person wasn't listening properly. Vivaldi says, "I see," and Adriana, turning to leave, says, "2 days hence, then." And wow! Just wow! Not even a goodbye, Vivaldi. Thank you for your time. Thank you for agreeing to tutor me. Thank you for being so accommodating despite me coming in the middle of the fucking night. Adriana's lines lack any semblance of acknowledgement that Vivaldi is a participant in the conversation. She speaks as though she's only enacting out the conversation with him out of necessity, like she's so focused on getting what she wants that what Vivaldi might have to say about the situation is barely even of secondary concern in her mind. And that's basically what the issue is. The dialogue lacks empathy, and this lack of empathetic dialogue from Adriana is a result of her lines being entirely mechanical. Each of her lines is nothing more than pragmatic towards the narrative goals of the scene. A line such as, "The man they call Il Prete Rousseau," is not said for Vivaldi, it's said to expose a fact about Vivaldi to the reader. Likewise, a line such as, "I trust that will be sufficient for my first month of lessons," is not really said to make an offer to Vivaldi, but to bypass any conversation about payment or incentive that the characters might want to have, and to just get the payment out of the way so the story beat can continue unimpeded. And, of course, a line such as, "That is why I have gone to such lengths to find you," is not meant to explain anything to Vivaldi, but to set up a mystery for the reader to anticipate an answer to. None of these lines would be said naturally if this situation were taking place in reality, and all of them draw attention to the narrative goals of the scene. The line, "2 days hence, then," is said to finalize the date when Adriana and Vivaldi next meet, but then she just fucking turns to leave because the scene has fulfilled its narrative goals, so she's got no further purpose in being there. When Vivaldi says, "Wait, may I at least learn your name, Signorina?" and Adriana says, "Adriana," all it does is make me think, holy shit, they exchanged money, made a deal, set a date, and now he's agreed to tutor her, and the entire time he didn't even know what her name was. What kind of defective human beings are these people? A good exercise for aspiring writers trying to craft believable dialogue scenes is to act out the scenes with several friends. Get a medley of people you know as both actors and an audience. Sit in the audience yourself and try to see how the actors read the lines without giving them any additional direction and what the audience's response is to them. If a line comes across to the actors or the audience as different than you intended, then you may want to change it. Also, if you want to try and incorporate some human elements into the dialogue, let the actors improvise the scene a little bit and see if their improvised lines fit with the context and the characters. Anyhow, this is definitely the last video I'm making on The Violinist of Venice. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.